Don Johnson was stopped at the German border in 2002 with $8 billion in financial documents. Banks froze his accounts overnight. 2 years later, he filed for bankruptcy. His Colorado ranch was hours away from being auctioned off when he walked into an office with $14.5 million in cash. But that wasn't the worst part. In 1986, cocaine was found in his Ferrari. Assault allegations followed, and at 22, he moved a 14-year-old girl into his house. The truth about what really happened would take decades to surface. Don Johnson was born on December 15, 1949, inside his grandmother's house in Flat Creek, Missouri. It was a tiny place near Galena, in Stone County. His mother, Nell Wilson, was just 16, working as a beautician. His father, Freddie Wayne Johnson, was 19 and trying to survive as a farmer. They were both kids themselves when they got married. It was right after World War II, and poor rural families like theirs had very few chances. Both sides of the family were religious. His grandparents were ministers, trying to hold things together, but there was barely any money. Johnson later said they lived in abject poverty. Flat Creek was so isolated that they didn't have any modern comforts, and there wasn't much hope of a better life. As time passed, their little house filled with stress. Freddie and Nell were too young to handle everything. They were always gone, working long hours at different jobs just to buy food. They fought all the time. Don remembered the yelling, the tension, and the feeling that nobody was really in charge. He basically had to raise himself. He said in interviews that it was incredibly dysfunctional and abusive. The fights were just one part. The real pain came from the way his father handled discipline. Freddie used belts and switches, hitting the kids hard over small things. Johnson said it wasn't just spanking. It was real violence. He believed his father was letting out his frustration about their hard life on the kids, especially him. The beatings became part of Don's daily life. He started to grow angry, rebellious, and detached. The pain built up slowly and stayed with him. When Don turned 5 in 1954, they left Missouri and moved to Wichita, Kansas. Freddie had found a job at Boeing Aircraft, which felt like a fresh start. But the problems didn't go away. The city was busy, loud, and demanding. The long factory shifts left both parents even more exhausted, and they were rarely home. The fighting never stopped. And by the time Don turned 12 in 1961, his parents divorced. Don stayed with his mother, along with his younger sister and 2 brothers. His father was gone, and the small stability they had disappeared overnight. By age 13, in 1962, Don was skipping school and stealing things. The courts got involved. Kansas law didn't allow kids to miss school that often, and Don had been missing a lot. He was brought in for truancy and petty theft. He told the court his mother was overwhelmed, and he was basically on his own. The judge said Don needed structure, so they sent him back to Missouri to live with his father. That was supposed to help him, but it sent him straight back into the same abusive house he had escaped years earlier. The idea was that farm life would straighten him out, but the result was more of the same pain. This was how the system worked in the early 60s. Boys were sent back to their fathers, even if those fathers were part of the problem. Eventually, Don was kicked out again, this time for good. At age 13, he was thrown out of his father's house and returned to Wichita. He was still a teenager, now trying to survive on his own. By 1966, he was in his senior year at Wichita South High School. He lived in low-income housing originally built for Boeing workers. He took 2 jobs. One was in a butcher shop, where he spent his days cutting up full slabs of beef with sharp knives. The other was as a ladies' shoe salesman. He was covered in blood at one job, selling shoes with a smile at the other. He was earning his way through high school with jobs most grown men would avoid. The butcher work toughened him, but the shoe job revealed his charm. Women liked him, and he started to notice the attention. That year, Don got into trouble again. He fell asleep in business class, got into a fight with the coaches, and was kicked off the football team. Needing credits to graduate, he randomly signed up for drama. He thought it would be easy, but the teacher, Mrs. Sharon Pyle, saw something different. She gave him the lead role of Tony in the school play West Side Story. Don had never acted before, but the moment he stepped on stage, everything changed. The crowd's applause hit him hard. It felt like something he'd never had at home. Real love, real attention. He later said it felt like a drug. That performance turned heads. Critics came. Theater scouts came. And for the first time in his life, Don felt like maybe he was meant for something. That same year, something else happened. At age 12, he had already lost his virginity to a 16 or 17-year-old babysitter. He told this story years later, saying it happened when his mom left him home alone with her while working. It wasn't normal. It wasn't safe. But in Don's world, it was the only kind of intimacy he understood. It gave him a way to escape everything else that was wrong at home. From that point on, he chased that feeling. Being loved, being seen, even if it meant going down dangerous paths. After high school, he got serious about acting. He auditioned for the University of Kansas Summer Theater program. He didn't expect anything, but they gave him a partial scholarship, then a full one. It was a huge deal for someone with no money. He became a drama major, but didn't get along with the rules. He was too rebellious for college life. At 18, he started dating his acting teacher. She was 29. It shocked everyone on campus. The age gap was big, but Don didn't care. He wanted validation from older women and didn't follow anyone's rules. His looks and charm made him popular, but his choices made him controversial. In his second year, he auditioned for the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco and got in. He dropped out of college, packed his things, and hitchhiked to California with just $20. The city was wild. It was the late 1960s. San Francisco was full of protests, hippies, artists, and drugs. Don dove straight into it all. He joined protests, tried marijuana, lived in shared houses, and met actors who were also broke but hopeful. He said this time changed him. He felt free for the first time. It was messy, but it gave him a different view of life. He started to believe he didn't have to follow anyone's path. He could make his own. At 18, he landed his first major theater role in a play called Your Own Thing, a rock version of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. The play ran during the height of the hippie movement. Don performed in a world full of psychedelic colors, loud guitars, and anti-authority vibes. Cast parties were wild, and drugs like LSD were common. This world became normal to him. The chaos on stage and off stage felt familiar. It was the kind of unpredictability he had grown up in, but now it had a purpose. A year later, in 1969, he got cast in one of the most disturbing plays of that time, Fortune and Men's Eyes. He played a young prisoner who gets raped in jail, on stage, in front of a live audience. The violence was so graphic that police thought it might be illegal. Don's character was attacked every night on stage by Sal Mineo's character, Rocky. It was raw and painful, but it made people pay attention. Critics praised him, and Hollywood noticed. This role directly led to his first movie in 1970, The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart. During this time, he lived with Sal Mineo. They were close. Sal was his mentor. In 1976, Don came home and found Sal murdered outside their apartment. He had been stabbed through the heart. The killer had left his wallet untouched, so it didn't look like a robbery. The police couldn't find the weapon. Don was the one who found the body. He was never the same after that. In 1969, before all that happened, Don was briefly the lead singer of a psychedelic rock band called Horses. They recorded one album with White Whale Records. The producer had worked with The Doors and other big names. Don replaced the original singer and recorded songs like Class of '69, which had sexual lyrics and was banned from the radio. The band had talent, but it didn't last. They broke up after one album. Don moved on. Acting pulled him harder than music. Even when he was doing theater in San Francisco, he was still broke. He made $150 a week, which barely covered food. He slept on couches. He worked side jobs. He got lucky during the Vietnam War draft. In the 1969 lottery, he drew number 320 out of 366. That was high enough to avoid getting sent to war. A lower number could have changed everything, but instead, he stayed in the U.S., kept acting, and built a future out of the chaos he came from. The movie that was supposed to launch Don Johnson's career almost ruined it. MGM handed him a $2.8 million budget for The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart, but the film brought in less than $850,000. Critics didn't just dislike it, they tore him apart. One paper called him a lavender-lipped lump, and MGM dropped him immediately. He admitted later it nearly sent him back to Missouri. That film was so controversial and embarrassing, it was never released on VHS or DVD. The hallucination scenes featured real Warhol stars in sexually graphic moments. Hollywood buried it. Then came Zachariah in 1971. It was supposed to be edgy, a psychedelic western featuring live performances from Joe Walsh and Country Joe. But what people remembered were the nude scenes in the desert, the strange homoerotic tension, and a 2-minute drum solo after a shooting. The film cost $3.2 million and earned only a third of that. Johnson was now viewed as unfit for serious roles, and westerns stayed far away from him. By 1971 and 1972, he was doing $500 TV gigs just to stay afloat. His Gunsmoke episode didn't lead to more work, and he faced rejection after rejection. He auditioned for 4 different pilots in a year, and none made it to air. Producers made advances. He said no. It cost him roles. At one point, he thought he might move back home and work on his dad's farm. Even his agent dropped him twice. Things got worse in the Herod experiment, 1973. The FBI got involved. There were nude group therapy scenes. Real marijuana was accidentally used during filming. Even worse, Don started dating 14-year-old Melanie Griffith during this shoot. He was 22. They moved in together when she was 15. The media lost it. Photographers staked out her mom's house. When she turned 18, they married. It lasted 6 months, and later, they married again and divorced again. In 1975, a boy and his dog turned into another nightmare. He played Vic, a man who roamed a post-apocalyptic wasteland with his telepathic dog, looking for food and women. The dog helped him find women to rape. There were scenes hinting at bestiality, forced pregnancy, and even cannibalism. It was too much. Feminist groups protested. Some theaters refused to show it. The film only made $2.1 million, but somehow became a cult classic. It even inspired Mad Max. Still, Johnson said it got him attention, not serious offers. Before Miami Vice, he had failed 5 different TV pilots. By 1984, networks didn't want to risk anything on him. Even though he nailed his first audition for Sonny Crockett, the execs kept dragging their feet. Over 200 other actors auditioned. Johnson had to go to multiple meetings to prove he was stable enough to carry a show. He barely got the part. The first season of Miami Vice didn't do well, but reruns over the summer turned it into a sensation. By season 2, it was top 10 on TV. Episodes cost $1.3 million each, way above other shows. They spent $10,000 per episode just for original music rights. The crew stayed in a Miami hotel for most of the production. Johnson became a household name overnight. In 1986, he won a Golden Globe. His song Heartbeat hit number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album went gold. He told the label he'd walk away if they released music he didn't believe in. People mocked the idea of an actor making music, but Johnson pulled it off. Then came the money fight. By season 3 of Miami Vice, Johnson wanted up to $150,000 per episode. He had started with $30,000. When the studio hesitated, he flew to Europe. Production had to shut down. NBC moved the show to 9 p.m. Fridays to compete with Dallas, their biggest rival. Johnson got his money. Johnson even changed fashion. He pushed for pastel t-shirts and no socks with loafers. Armani suits, Versace jackets, all explained in the show as evidence locker grabs. Ray-Ban Wayfarers made a comeback. His look got so popular that razor companies started designing tools just to keep the designer stubble. But behind the scenes, things spiraled. In January 1986, he got caught with half a gram of cocaine in his Ferrari. Reagan's war on drugs was in full swing. He got off with probation and a $500 fine, but the media frenzy almost got the show canceled. His relationship with Melanie Griffith was always tabloid gold. By age 15, she had moved into his house. When they married the first time, he spent the night before the wedding with a beauty queen. They divorced in 6 months. In 1989, they got back together. She was pregnant with Dakota. But rehab costs and relapses took over. Fights over money, screaming matches, rehab bills climbing to $400,000. Griffith eventually filed for divorce again in 1994. One Miami Vice episode in 1985 eerily mirrored his real life. It showed a rape cover-up by a rich general's son. Around that time, Johnson himself faced assault allegations. Multiple ex-models came forward. Nothing stuck legally, but he quietly settled lawsuits in 1998 and again in 2006. After Miami Vice ended in 1989, Johnson needed a big win. The hot spot wasn't it. The film bombed, making just over $1 million on a $6 million budget. Virginia Madsen's accent got mocked. Critics said it was embarrassing. Orion Pictures, the studio, eventually went bankrupt. In 1996, Tin Cup gave him a big payday, $10 million. He played a sleazy golf pro. It was a hit, but it confirmed something. He was no longer the leading man. He was the jerk, the side character. That role, despite the paycheck, locked him in. Between 1991 and 1996, he kept trying. He starred in a Sidney Sheldon miniseries that never aired. His second album flopped. It sold less than 50,000 copies. One critic said, "Don Johnson sings as well as Glenn Frey acts." By 1997, he was taking any job. In Goodbye Lover, he played another smug executive who sleeps with Patricia Arquette, while she whispers, "I'm not wearing any underwear." Critics hated it. He disappeared to his Colorado ranch. In 1999, he hit rock bottom. Voice work for I Yabba Dabba Do. He got $200,000 for a minor part in a Flintstones cartoon. A-list actors don't do that. Not if things are going well. His name wasn't even mentioned in most reviews. From $10 million film roles to uncredited cartoon voice work in 3 years. That was the fall of Don Johnson. It started again for Don Johnson on March 29, 1996. That was the night Nash Bridges aired for the first time. The show quietly pulled him back into the spotlight, this time as a 90s TV powerhouse instead of just the guy from Miami Vice. He was making $150,000 per episode, not the $450,000 figure some people later repeated. The episodes cost nearly $2 million each to produce, partly because they were shot across San Francisco. CBS ordered 6 full seasons. That was 122 episodes, not 111. Johnson didn't just star in it, he also served as executive producer, and his lawyer helped him get something almost unheard of in Hollywood: 50% ownership of the show's copyright. His deal was rare enough that one attorney later called it one of a kind. The show averaged 10 million weekly viewers at its peak. But that contract would end up being far more valuable than anyone expected. In February 2009, Johnson sued Reicher Entertainment for $50 million. He said they hadn't paid him his share of syndication profits from Nash Bridges, even though his contract clearly gave him 50% ownership. After a 2-week trial in July 2010, a jury agreed with him. They said Reicher had hidden how profitable the show really was. The jury awarded Johnson $23.2 million. Then Judge Michael Stern added $28 million more in interest, bringing the total to $51.2 million. Johnson's legal team had proved that Nash Bridges had aired in over 40 countries and brought in $325 million in global syndication revenue. Meanwhile, Reicher had claimed they were operating at a loss. The case reminded people of a similar verdict involving Disney and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where creators were awarded $269.2 million. Reicher appealed, arguing there were mistakes in the trial. But Johnson had waited more than 10 years to get paid for a deal he had negotiated himself. Before the courtroom win, though, Johnson nearly lost everything. In August 2004, his 2 companies filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy to stop a foreclosure on his 17-acre ranch near Aspen, Colorado. That land meant everything to him. The problem started with a $10.6 million loan from D.E. Shaw Laminar Lending. Johnson's companies used the money to pay off creditors, including Aspen Valley Hospital and small local businesses. But by April 2006, they still owed $14.5 million, including $544,584 in interest and $7,170 in attorney fees. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for Wednesday. Johnson walked into the public trustee's office on Tuesday, just before noon, and paid the full amount. Had he missed it, the property would have been gone. Later, he sued D.E. Shaw, claiming the loan had been structured in a way that forced him into a corner. He ended up using $14.5 million from a $15.75 million property sale just to hold on. But the crisis wasn't new. On November 6, 2002, German customs stopped Johnson at the Switzerland-Germany border. In his briefcase, they found more than $8 billion in financial documents. Not cash, just certificates, credit notes, and bank statements. He said he was heading to Zurich to meet potential film investors. They were also going to stop at a Mercedes-Benz plant to look at the new Maybach. German officials thought it looked suspicious. One customs officer said real investors don't carry that much paper documentation in a car. Overnight, tabloids accused him of money laundering. Banks shut down 2 of his accounts. A major film deal collapsed. His business reputation was crushed, even though he was cleared of wrongdoing. The damage had already been done. Throughout the run of Nash Bridges, Johnson had full creative control. He blocked romantic storylines and kept the tone gritty, exactly how he liked it. But that came with trade-offs. The show stayed focused but missed out on broader appeal. Still, his salary of $150,000 per episode and the show's high budget meant he was making real money. Even then, he was under constant financial stress. Legal fees, property upkeep, alimony and child support from multiple marriages, including his divorce from Melanie Griffith. He had a Beverly Hills home, the Colorado Ranch, and a growing family. His wife, Kelly Flager, a former nursery teacher from San Francisco, helped steady his personal life during that chaotic time. They'd married after his split from Griffith. and she stood by him as he tried to keep everything from falling apart. Back in April 1994, Johnson had already been sober for 11 years. Then he relapsed. He spent over a year drinking again, and things fell apart quickly. One morning, hungover and shaking, he sat at breakfast with his ex-girlfriend Patty Darbanville and their infant son Jesse. He looked at the baby's face and saw something that broke him. He later called it horror. That moment forced him to face the damage he was doing. He told reporters, "I'm a drunk and addict. I'll fix it." Within days, he checked into rehab. That wasn't the last time. In June 1994, he entered the Betty Ford Center. But his outpatient treatment had already failed. He had become addicted to the very pills meant to help him. By 2001, his new wife Kelly pushed him back into treatment. This time, it cost around $400,000. He had to sell off 20 luxury cars and several homes. He later said that rehab, as expensive as it was, saved his life. Without it, there wouldn't have been anything left. Johnson had first met Kelly in 1992 at a birthday party for San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown. They didn't start dating until 5 years later, but he'd already told a producer that he planned to marry her someday. In April 1998, she wore a 5.5-carat diamond engagement ring. They married the next year and had 3 children: Atherton Grace in 1999, Jasper Breckenridge in 2002, and Deacon James in 2006. He always credited her with being the reason he survived the worst parts of his life. Bob Dylan once told him that a good relationship is built on kindness, trust, and respect. Johnson said their marriage had all 3. In 2004 and 2006, the money pressure hit again. City National Bank sued him in March 2004, claiming he owed them $930,000. The Aspen Ranch was still at risk. Grocery bills were reportedly as high as $5,000. Everything was falling apart. But just before the auction, he made the $14.5 million payment in full, mostly using residuals from Nash Bridges. He saved the ranch, but barely. It was a close call that made him start taking his spending seriously. After 2007, Johnson stepped away from Hollywood for a while. He focused on his family. Powerboat racing became a new obsession. In 1988, he had already raced in the APBA World Cup in Key West. That thrill stayed with him. In December 2024, he turned 75. All 5 of his kids showed up for a rare family reunion: Jesse, Dakota, Grace, Jasper, and Deacon. Even Melanie Griffith's daughter, Stella, joined. Johnson posted a picture on Instagram and captioned it, "My kids are my everything." That post said more than any press interview ever could. Then came a second wind. From 2010 to 2012, he played a deadbeat father on HBO's Eastbound and Down. The character was so selfish, he literally called the cops on his own son for fake reward money. That role opened a new path. It led to Tarantino casting him in Django Unchained as a Southern plantation owner. He shared scenes with Jamie Foxx and showed he could play dark just as well as he once played cool. In 2019, he played Richard Drysdale in Knives Out. That one role earned him around $5 million. The film made $312 million globally on a $40 million budget. Suddenly, Johnson wasn't just a nostalgic figure. He was part of a major Hollywood ensemble with Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, and Jamie Lee Curtis. And his character, the arrogant father hiding secrets, showed his depth. People saw he could do more than just detective roles. In September 2024, he returned to TV again. He was 74 and cast as Captain Robert Massey in Dr. Odyssey, a medical cruise ship drama created by Ryan Murphy. The show drew 7.59 million viewers in its first 3 days. That made it ABC's biggest drama premiere in 4 years. The show brought in 13.6 million viewers across platforms in the first week. Johnson starred alongside Joshua Jackson and Philippa Sue. Critics said he still had the charm and weight to carry a series. It was his first lead role in over 2 decades. By 2025, Don Johnson's net worth had stabilized around $50 million. Part of that came from his role in Rebel Ridge, a Netflix thriller that hit 31.2 million views in just 3 days. The next week, it added another 38.6 million. Johnson played Chief Sandy Byrne, a corrupt police officer. His character was both charming and terrifying. Critics said he had become Hollywood's new go-to villain. But he wasn't just acting. He had real estate investments, music royalties, and earnings as a producer and director. His 1986 song, Heartbeat, had once reached number 5 on the Billboard charts, and his daughter Dakota's success in the 50 Shades series gave the Johnson name relevance for a whole new generation.